can I thank the tens of thousands of people that have had themselves tested over the weekend, especially those in southwestern Sydney, where we've seen in particular venues be subject of a number of cases. Overnight, New South Wales had 17 cases. Important to note that 8 of those were in hotel quarantine, so 9 due to local cases, all of them known but for one, which Dr Chant will speak about. So New South Wales, given the circumstances, is holding the line and doing okay, but we are still on high alert. Dr Chant and I said a couple of weeks ago that the next month to 6 weeks would be critical, and we're still halfway through that period, and it's really, really important for us to stay vigilant. There has been a marked improvement in businesses being COVID safe, but we still have more to do. The rules came in on Friday and there has been a marked improvement, but our compliance officers and the police will be ever vigilant to clamp down on any businesses that aren't COVID safe, but also on patrons who are doing the wrong thing. At the end of the day, it's up to all of us to keep getting tested if we have the mildest symptoms. If we're asked to stay home for 14 days, make sure it's 14 days, not 12, not 13, but the full 2 weeks, because this is critical in controlling the spread and making sure New South Wales gets on top of the virus so that we control the virus and the virus doesn't get in control of our state. It's so important for us to keep getting tested with the mildest of symptoms, and of course to make sure that if we're waiting for test results, that all of our immediate household continues to isolate for that full period, especially if you've been to a venue that's been identified, especially if you've been subject to a health request, to make sure you isolate. It's so critical. We're relying on everybody to do the right thing. To this point in time, it stood New South Wales well, but we need that to continue. And of course, during this time, our aim is not just to get on top of the health, but also to keep jobs and employment going in New South Wales. And I'm very grateful that the Treasurer today has announced a number of stamp duty concessions, especially for first home buyers in relation to new homes. Not only will this allow people to get into the market for the first time, it is a buyer's market after all, but also to generate construction and jobs, and that's really, really critical. And we're doing everything we can as a government to find that healthy balance between maintaining the health needs of our public, but also, of course, keeping jobs going, keeping the economy going, and keeping things open as much as possible. And that's what the new restrictions regarding caps on events and caps on the number of patrons came into place. It's what we call risk mitigants, to reduce the risk that if there is someone with a case, that it reduces the risk of the spread. And as you see, if you look at the last couple of weeks, there have been family celebrations or condolences, whether it's weddings or funerals or hospitality or indoor events. We know what the high wind risks are, and we know that funerals are a terribly emotional time for people, but please, unless it's your immediate household, you cannot have physical contact, whether it's a wedding, a funeral, whether you're out socialising with friends. It is so important for all of us not to let down our guard, because when you let down your guard, the virus can take hold and spread. It's really important for all of us not to let down our guard, as hard as it is, but our lives can stay at this level of freedom and economic stability and continuity if all of us continue to do the right thing, which is so critical. I'll ask Dr Chant now to give a more detailed update on the cases in New South Wales, and then the Treasurer will outline the detail of the stamp duty announcements today. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. So there were 17 new cases in the 24 hours to 8 p.m. on the 26th of July, bringing the state's total to 3,496 cases. 3 cases were linked to the Thai Rock restaurant in Wetherill Park, and they were household contacts of previously confirmed cases. There was 4 cases linked to the funeral cluster at St Brennan's Church. 8 cases were travellers in hotel quarantine, and 2 cases are still under investigation. 1 is linked to the Thai Rock Potts Point, and 1 is a man in his 40s in southwestern Sydney, and in that case we are investigating the source of how he acquired the infection. There are currently 101 COVID cases being treated by New South Wales Health. There are 5 COVID patients in intensive care. One is ventilated. And 90% of the cases being treated by New South Wales Health are in non-acute or out-of-hospital care. In terms of the significant alerts for the community, We've indicated that a staff member at the Thai Rock restaurant at Potts Point has now tested positive for COVID, and this follows a positive test from a person who dined at the restaurant on the 17th of July. So anyone who attended the Thai Rock Potts Point for 2 hours or more between Wednesday the 15th of July and Saturday the 25th of July is being immediately directed to be tested for COVID and to self-isolate for 14 days since they were last there, regardless of symptoms. And anyone who attended the restaurant for less than 2 hours on these dates should monitor for symptoms and immediately isolate and seek testing if symptoms appear. The venue is being closed for cleaning, and as I indicated, investigations into the source of infection are underway. In relation to the St Brennan's funeral cluster, we've had a total of 9 cases linked to that gathering, and all the attendees of this funeral and the related events have been identified as close contacts and have been asked to self-isolate and get it tested regardless of any symptoms, and continue to self-isolate from 14 days even if that test is negative. A couple who attended the funeral and yesterday tested positive for COVID also attended 2 restaurants whilst infectious. So anyone who attended the Tat Viet Noodle House, aka Crispy Chicken Noodle House at Cabramatta between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. on the 22nd of July, or the Anne Restaurant, Bankstown, between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on the 23rd of July should monitor for symptoms and immediately isolate and seek testing if they appear. These restaurants have been directed to undertake cleaning, and in some cases deep cleaning can be undertaken outside normal business hours, and it's not necessary for the restaurant to close. A child who attended the funeral has also tested positive and is counted in today's cases. The child attended the St George's River Grammar, a Christian school at George's Hall in southwestern Sydney, for 1 day whilst infectious on the 23rd of July. The school's closed for cleaning, and there are 18 students and 4 staff identified as close contacts of the child and will be isolating for 14 days. We are asking the community in particular suburbs to come forward in particular for testing, and that is Harris Park and Middleton Grange. So residents in those communities with the most minimal of symptoms, we're asking you to come forward and get testing. That's to assure ourselves that we are not missing transmission in those suburbs. My message echoes the Premier's words. This is a period where we need to sustain those high rates of testing. I know the weather is a little bit challenging outside, but please do not let that deter you. Do not put off getting a test at this time. It is essential we maintain high rates of testing across the state. I would also like to echo the Premier's words around the importance of maintaining that social distancing. Consider the use of masks where you can't achieve that social distancing, so things like public transport or other crowded venues. And at this time, we're asking you to keep those gatherings as small as possible and to also not travel for non-essential reasons at this time. This is a critical time over the next 3 to 4 weeks, and if we can all play our part in changing behaviours and reducing interactions, it will help us control the spread of COVID-19. I'd also like to acknowledge the work that business has undertaken to step up their COVID safety measures, and it's incredibly important that those continue to be strengthened.